Warning, this podcast may change the way you think about business, entrepreneurship, and money forever. The Conquistador podcast was created for dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to conquer their future. To be an epic entrepreneur, you must adopt the right mental paradigms as well as master the art of selling, marketing, and finance. Now, it's time to welcome a serial entrepreneur, leader, husband, and father who is passionate about sharing the strategies that are helping him excel in life and in business. Here is your host,
Mauricio Garcia.
How are you doing, everybody? Mauricio Garcia here, and I'm joined by the great Julian Garcia, who's my brother, and it's always a pleasure for us to be able to come live here and share positive things. You know, when the world is mostly going negative, we want to stay in a positive note. And I think everybody, if there's something that we all have in common, is not only better our life today, but also prepare for a better future tomorrow. And I think that everybody at some point want to know how to make more money. I mean, that's a subject that we talk a lot in this program, because would you agree? People are looking for ways to make more money.
Including myself, yeah.
Everybody's doing that. So, but we cannot make more money or even dream about becoming a millionaire or a billionaire unless we think and strategize like a millionaire or a billionaire.
How do we do that? Do we follow a certain protocol? Is there a list? Is there examples? What are we talking about here?
Well, here, before we get into the topic today, because I do have a very nice list prepared for everybody, and that is a study of how rich people actually think. And today we're going to talk about the second richest person in the world and what is some of the philosophies, some of the paradigms that he operates under to be able to be that, to have that success. But before we get into it, like I said, I want to thank our sponsors. I want to really thank them and mention them. Hegemon Group International, if you haven't heard, they are in the business of helping people, common people like Julian and I, to become financial pros and generate more income by helping other people solve their most common financial problems. So I want to invite you to check them out by going to hgicrusade.com. If you want to go directly to my pages /Mauricio, hgicrusade.com, check them out. They may have the answer that you're looking for to increase your lifestyle today and to prepare a better financial future for tomorrow. So let's jump right into the topic of today, bro. And it's the thing many people ask is, how do people that are extremely successful today go about creating such massive wealth? And when it comes to the second richest person in the world, which is, of course, Jeff Bezos, a lot of people look at him and, 27 years in the making. It's taken him 27 years to be where he is at today. What does that tell you when you are maybe just thinking about starting something, and then you look at these guys like Jeff Bezos that is going to be 3 decades now in order to be the success that he is today?
Well, I couldn't help but notice that his customer service seems to be a priority.
Yeah.
So, when you're providing a product or a service or whatever it might be, your first priority and main priority is your customer, because that's who you want coming back. How do you win them over versus the rest?
Yeah, it's very interesting that you say that, because in my industry and in many industries, I think, especially when it comes to sales, if you're just chasing for the money and you just want to make that commission for that week, or make ends meet that month, it's like you're always just chasing this next client. I'm speaking to you. Coming from somebody that works in the financial industry, where people that either sell investments or they sell insurance or they sell mortgages, stuff like that, is even in real estate, stuff like that, it seems like most professionals in that industry aren't really as obsessed with customer service and what they can continue to deliver for their customers. Rather, they focus more on how can I make a sale now, make my commission, and move on to the next thing. Not everybody is as obsessed and really strategizing like Jeff Bezos. That's why many companies aren't as big and as successful as Jeff Bezos, But it's good that we start the conversation that way, because, at the end of the day, it's all about customers that get you to more customers and customers that keep coming back to buy more of your product and services. One of the things that was really eye-opening to me, it was one of the interviews that somebody did to Jeff Bezos in 1997, because I think he started this whole idea in 1994, but by 1997, I'm sorry, obviously Amazon was already out there. It was not what it is today, but someone asked him, how did you see this vision? Like, how did you come up with Amazon? And here's what I think we should all learn from, is that he said, while I was working at a hedge fund, it used to be this, I don't know exactly what he did at the hedge fund, but anyway, hedge funds, you manage money for rich people, stuff like that. And he's like, I came across a statistic that the adoption of internet, like people were adopting the internet at the rate of 2,300%. Now, if you think about that for a minute, if you look at anything that is growing at 2,000% per year, if you take that same growth to your money, imagine 2,000% per year. You put that into any sort of growth, that is massive. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, if that's what he noticed, he figured, well, you know what? I'm going to hone in on at least putting my marketing where all the people are.
Well, he saw that the adoption of the internet, in 1997, but I was still in high school in Morelia, Michoacan. I came here in 1998. By 1997, and prior to that, obviously, he must have seen this statistic way before 1994, to be honest, right? But he saw that internet was growing at the rate of 2,300%, at least people adopting it, and he needed to figure out a way to find some sort of a product, something that he can put on top of that growth to take advantage of that. And so what I'm trying to get with this thing that I'm saying is that we have to be open to the things that are happening around us. And sometimes when you see an opportunity, you take it, even if you don't see clearly what it's going to end up being. Because what I take away from that conversation that Jeff Bezos had in that interview is he didn't know exactly what Amazon was going to end up being. He didn't know. He just saw that the internet was growing so fast, and he needed to find something to put on top of that to ride that wave. And so if you are listening to the podcast, is either you are somebody who is looking to grow a business, who is in business, who is an entrepreneur, who is passionate about entrepreneurship, and I think that's a very big lesson to learn, which is, hey, what is, what I have to do now? Like, I have this idea, I just have to take a massive imperfect action, go after it, but also analyze if you are riding some wave. And there's a lot of different waves, and I think Fridays when we talk about business trends, we're gonna talk about what those different waves are for you to be able to take advantage of those trending businesses and maybe attempt to do something like the Jeff Bezos.
Not necessarily try to do something like him, but at least follow the same steps that he's followed, what's worked for him. Again, I'm going to touch back onto the customer service. And, I was reading an article on one of the main focuses. That is one of his main focuses. And I've seen it. I think we've all seen it with Amazon. They don't really care what the issue is. Their priority is solving that issue to keep you happy. At the end of the day, it might cost them a little bit of pennies, but they know you're going to come back. By you doing such a little thing, they know they got you. They know that they made things easy for you. And that could be applied for, I'd say, any business.
Yeah, the whole idea is understanding the psychology behind the operation. That's why the podcast started, How to Think Like a Millionaire, Strategize. I think what you just said, obsess over customer service, is I may lose, like Amazon started doing a free delivery, right? I think before Amazon, there was really no companies out there offering free delivery of their things. And stuff like that. Like nowadays, you can, like you said, you can return an item, whether that's on Kohl's, or you can just return the item back, no questions asked, to get your refund. They make it very easy for you to do that. And I think when customers go through that experience, you can't help but to keep coming back to them, because you are at very little risk of not being able to get your money back if the product was not what you expected. So yeah, absolutely.
Would you say in a way that would be considered a way of, because we talked about it in the previous week of, marketing and advertisement.
Yeah.
I have friends that have told me stories about Amazon where they're like, you know what, I ordered this item and it came home and it just wasn't what I thought it was or whatever. And I said, I reached out to Amazon and they said, you know what, don't worry about it. We're going to send you the right item. Keep the one you already have on top of that. I mean, that right there, the person's like, done.
It blows your mind.
It blows your mind. And I think, again, that goes back to, winning a customer for...
Yeah, and then you look at what most companies do, is like they make it so hard for you to be able to get your money back. Like
Right.
once you buy it, like, if you get a subscription or something, you can't find that cancel button. You have to call, send an email. They make it so difficult. So I think they lose in the end when they are more focused on the company's benefit versus obsessing over client, satisfaction. And so when we go back again thinking, because I did write a few things here so we can go through them, is, day one philosophy. I love the fact that I can adopt to that way of thinking, because I remember when I started my first company, like the financial planning company, my software company, and I'm always asking myself if, just because we have a lot of clients nowadays, just because the company is generating revenue, am I having the same attitude that I had that first day I had this dream, this day that I wanted to do something? I don't know if you've heard, but that's one of the things that we can rescue from the culture of Amazon, is that they have this philosophy that they cannot rest on their previous success, that they have to have the fire, the passion, the innovation that they had on day one. Even though they are $1 trillion company, they cannot rest on their success. Otherwise, they're going to be fall behind, because somebody is always going to be innovating. And I think a lot of companies that get big, a lot of companies that are making a lot of money, especially small-time entrepreneurs like us, where you're making a good amount of money and you're in this comfortable state, it's like you forget what day one is, and that is the day you begin to die.
I never looked at it that way, but that makes a lot of sense. I mean, and I think that applies for anything. Everything continues to evolve. It doesn't even matter what you do in life.
Right.
Everything continues to evolve, so you need to continue to study. You need to continue to put in the work to put out the best. And I think that's a great philosophy.
Yeah, and so I say that because I see a lot of my people that I just happen to know, that I found along my journey, that I saw them start a business, and then they were, luckily enough, they did some things right. They started making a lot of money, bought a nice home, purchased really nice cars, and I just saw them just sitting very comfortable. It's like, so I make $1 million a year, so the day one attitude was gone. And 2 years later, guess what? They had to sell their luxury cars. They had to sell their luxury mansion. They had to sell all these different things. And I'm here sitting saying that. I'm not criticizing them. I actually went through that. I don't know if you remember when, prior to the crisis of 2008, I was pretty comfy, living in a big home with these big cars and stuff like that. What happened? I got a day two attitude. And I lost it all.
You figured I'm going to just sit in cruise control. It doesn't work that way.
Yeah, but it's very hard. I think it's really hard to not do that. It's just human nature. I believe that once you are in this comfortable place where you don't have to go and hunt, because in other words, you're not starving. You're not as hungry. In other words, you've got enough money. Like, how much is enough? Maybe I'll get off subject here, but how much is enough to maintain your day one philosophy? Because when entrepreneurs begin a journey, they want to do something. In many cases, they are in this situation where they can't make ends meet, and they are very hungry, right? Because they have nothing to lose, so they go all in. But then they get $1 million or $10 million or whatever that amount of money is, and it's like they get full, and they get into second day attitude.
Or they could simply turn their gear or focus into something else, because that's a very easy thing to fall into.
Right.
All this money comes in, Now I can't wait to
You can have fun.
Have fun with it.
Yeah, now you can have fun. Now you can go to all these parties. Now you can do these things.
But the key thing is not lose the focus on your day one philosophy.
It's a day one philosophy. And I think, but I'm trying to figure out, because I believe that every human, like you, how much is it going to take for you to be full? Like, let's say you had $100 million in the bank account right now. Would you be here every day hustling, doing this podcast?
Probably
Would you be
not.
hustling as much as you? What would you be doing with $100 million?
Gosh, I mean, that's a loaded question. I don't think it's one of those things that unless I had it there, then I would probably continue. But right off the bat, if I had $1 million right now, I would, number one would probably be find a team to guide me.
That's okay. Okay. No, okay. I didn't want to interrupt you, because obviously you were struggling for a little bit. It's like, what would I do with $100 million? I don't know what I do. Until you have it. But I guess the point I'm trying to make for everybody listening today is that there is probably a dollar amount that you're gonna get that you would have in your bank account that's gonna slow you down. You're just gonna take it easy. And I believe that people like the Elon Musks of the world, the Bill Gates of the world, the Jeff Bezos of the world, they are not money-driven individuals. And the way that they are hungry forever is they have this passion and this mission to really change the world, which is no longer a money thing. They're hungry for something other than money. Yeah. And that's why they, what keeps Jeff Bezos, which is who we're talking about, as driven today. What keeps Elon Musk as driven today is they are focused on a complete different paradigm. And so if we are going to be learning and we're going to be spending this time on the podcast, is starting to think like a millionaires and adopting their paradigms. Otherwise, we're not going to ever reach their level of success. Would you agree with that?
100%.
And so, another thing that I think we can rescue from Jeff Bezos is don't be a blockbuster. You know what happened to Blockbuster? You know the story of Blockbuster?
I've heard some stories, yeah.
I mean, you used to go to Blockbuster, right? They basically were sitting there very complacent, not willing to adapt. The story goes that Netflix, which everybody knows today, came to Blockbuster and basically were trying to strike a deal there together. And Blockbuster pretty much laughed at them, kicked them out the door, and says, "Get out of here. Your ideas aren't going to work." I hear stories. Even Netflix went to big channels like Televisa down in Mexico. They wanted to do something, and they were kicked out the door with this idea. And so the point I'm trying to make is that sometimes we rest on our previous success and we forget to innovate. And you may be thinking, I'm a small-time business. Well, what can I innovate in? And I can't help but to think the industry I'm in, which is the financial industry, that has probably been doing things the same way for over 100 years. If there's an old industry, it's probably the insurance industry. Yeah. Right, 100-year-old way of doing things. And so if we learn anything from Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, is that they basically grabbed an industry, they put it apart. I don't know if you know the story also that before Elon Musk built any cars, he actually took a Mercedes-Benz, he took it all apart, and that was obviously to learn, and with the intention of rebuilding something that's completely different. Like these guys question everything, and they go about this first principle thinking, which is, all right, this is the way this industry is, or this is the way this product is, and how can I, on a blank sheet of paper, rebuild from ground up? And I think a lot of people, when we start a business, we don't question those things. We're like, well, how are the things done today? How have they been done in the past? And that's how we do it. And that's why we are never really explosive and don't stay relevant long term, is because we don't adopt those, we don't question things.
I find it very interesting that you say that, because especially in a year when a pandemic hit,
yep,
all of a sudden, it almost seems like every industry is looking for a different way of doing
like innovation now.
Innovation.
Right.
And you have to do it. Everybody's doing it. Everyone's coming up with new things. Now it's come down to a point where you're almost being forced into it. But I think it's a good thing to adapt or to adopt.
Yeah.
For future things, just in general. Don't wait to be forced into making changes. Make them ahead of time.
Well, that's exactly what we can learn from Jeff Bezos. He's saying, look, you are either proactive and driving change, or you have no choice but to be reactive.
Right.
And what most people are doing today, businesses, they have to be reactive to the change.
Right.
And businesses, have had to reinvent themselves 100%. When before they just couldn't see it. I've seen interview after interview after interview from successful businesses that are public companies, and they had to reinvent themselves. Before they used to depend on going to trade shows and doing big conferences, and now they have to do everything virtual, and they couldn't even entertain the idea of having their employees be remote. The employees had to come in the office, they had to sit there for 8 to 10 hours, and they had to report, and now they have to create the possibility for their employees to work at home and all these different things. So it's just being reactive, meaning that maybe we were not innovating enough and couldn't see these things to drive change, and now we have no other choice but to be reactive.
Right.
Yeah. And so, with that being said, how are these multimillionaires reacting? One other thing that I wrote down here that I want to talk about is that what is the CEO's role? Because a lot of people that do listen to the podcast or that will tune into the podcast would be entrepreneurs, and many of them have to take the role as CEOs in their companies, right? They got to go and build the teams, and they may be asking themselves, what is my role? Like I've had a very difficult time understanding what is my role as the leader, as the CEO in these companies, right? You don't have to be a CEO in every one of the companies. Like I'm not the CEO in the technology company, right? But in the ones that I am, like what is my role? And it's very interesting to see people like Jeff Bezos that they're spending their time more in innovation. I don't remember what interview exactly that was, but he said something to the person interviewing him that the things he is working on right now are probably going to be things we're not going to see until 10, 20 years from now, which is he's spending his time as a CEO in the creative part. So there's got to be a creative part, a vision part, and so there's a saying that I even wrote down that says, you have to be willing to plant trees today whose shade you will never sit on. I'm going to read that again. You got to be able to plant trees today whose shade we will not sit on, which means obviously that we have to take a very long-term approach when building a business. And how many people do you think has the vision right now when they start a business to wait 10, 15, 20, or 30 years to see something really become something significant? Most people, I would bet most, especially small-time entrepreneurs, are not willing to wait a decade to see the fruits of their labor. Like imagine, plant for 10, 20, 30 years in this case.
That's a very good analogy. I never thought about that, but trees take a long time to build, and that's the same thing here. I mean, it's about commitment and dedication. And
there's no other way. Commitment, dedication, obviously building teams. I think one of the hardest things and what I'd like to learn more about and things that I study is how do these people obviously attract the right teams, and how do they innovate, how do they do these different things. And so that's part of what we're going to talk about in this podcast. Not just, basically putting apart the way that people like Jeff Bezos think and other entrepreneurs, but also, kind of implementing those things in our own life and then sharing back what we've seen growing. Like maybe to end the podcast, I can speak to something that we've been doing in our team, which is I stopped looking at my team members as employees. I want them to take ownership in what we're doing. I want them to feel that they have the flexibility to make decisions. As long as they understand where we're going, what the big picture and vision is, I want them to see themselves as leaders. I want them to see themselves as, like I said, as those decision makers, to give that team the ability to invent and create and propose. Because if I'm going to stand back, think about this. I'm the CEO, I'm the decision maker when you're a small company. You can actually, my way of thinking is, you could actually be the bottleneck that is hindering or prohibiting, maybe hindering is the better word, growth. Because your team is not coming up with ideas because they're like, well, whatever I think really doesn't matter. I just have to wait for orders from up to execute those orders. That's what I'm being paid for as an employee versus a visionary. I don't know if
that makes sense to me. But you know what? On that note, it takes a really good and disciplined leader as well to give your team the wings to say,
right,
open the door of like, hey, if I'm wrong, tell me I'm wrong. Help me see it the other way. But you have to be open to that.
Absolutely.
It can't be, I'm the leader, I call the shots here, and that's how it's going to be.
Yeah,
because sometimes the best ideas come from your teammates.
Absolutely, because they're executing. But most our organizations I see, at least what I've studied, is that have all this bureaucracy, all these hierarchies, and some of the people that are in the ground doing all the work, they have very little say.
Yeah.
And so I try to invert that way of thinking and say, no, my team, you are a leader. You have great ideas. Obviously, we don't just go on and execute whatever idea they bring in. Like, they have to propose it and do it. But we try not to be the bottleneck of that. And something interesting also comes to mind as I hear you speak is that, Jeff Bezos says something very important, is that people who are often wrong are usually mostly right, which is kind of, I don't know if those are the exact words, but here's what he's saying is that people who are linear in thinking, that they say they lock into something, have this way of thinking, and they don't change, they don't deviate no matter what new technology comes in, what new market conditions come in, they just have this way of thinking, then they never change because they want to be right, are often wrong. And the people that are often wrong, meaning that they are open, that they may have this idea today, but they are open and understand that they may not be right, and so they adopt new ideas, they test these different things, and they find this middle ground balance where they know in the back of their head is, okay, we're moving in this direction, but there are very high possibilities that I may be wrong, so I'm willing to course correct. So that's why he's saying, people who are often get things right are most often wrong, because it sounds like a tricky way of saying the thing, but
I get the gist of it.
Yeah.
I think most people would. In order for you to be right with an idea like that, it opens the door for at least one of your team members to be like, that's not gonna work, whatever. But at least it helps you hone in on that idea. It helps you focus on that, even if it's wrong, and then you come up with something that is at the end right.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't tell you many times as I was growing as an entrepreneur, obviously, even some of the people that I looked up as mentors in my early career, they were just linear thinkers, and they're like, this is the way things work, and technology, and they just would not change at all. Where are they today? They're completely out of business. They are irrelevant, and they're completely broke, because things that were working for them back in the day are no longer working in this new world. And they just forgot to be open and flexible, and maybe just fantasizing or entertaining the idea that they could be wrong, at those times. And so I hope that today brought up at least some things to think about when we are, going out there and trying to make our dreams come true. The podcast is the Conquistador Podcast, which is a podcast that promises to give you always value that can help you go out there and conquer it all. So with that being said, Julian, thank you so much, my friend, for being with me today. And for those of you listening, I'll see you guys. I hope to see you, or you can see us, because we're actually doing this on YouTube, but it's also, you can listen to us on Stitcher, on Spotify, and very soon you'll be able to hear us as well on Apple Podcasts. So search for the podcast. Thank you so much for your time. We'll see you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.
Warning, this podcast may change the way you think about business, entrepreneurship, and money forever. The Conquistador Podcast was created for dreamers, entrepreneurs, and leaders who want to conquer their future. To be an epic entrepreneur, you must adopt the right mental paradigms as well as master the art of selling, marketing, and finance.